Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. So she was considering in her own mind, as well as she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies. When suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her.
The truth, and please forgive us for it, is that we've been forging an art story.
As a charlatan, of course, my job was to try to make it real. Not that reality has anything to do with it.
Reality? It's the toothbrush waiting at home for you in its glass. A bus ticket, a paycheck, and the grave.
In the right mood, perhaps Elmire has just as few regrets as I have to have been a charlatan. But we're not so proud, either of us, as to lay any superior claim to being very much worse than the rest of you. What we professional liars hope to serve is truth. I'm afraid the pompous word for that is art. Picasso himself said it. Art, he said, is a lie. A lie that makes us realize the truth. Oya's grandfather, floating here in the air, has no comment, which isn't surprising because he never existed.
Behind the rock! Come on!
What the hell is this, amateur night? Stop him, Harry! Get him off that machine, that isn't a toy. Go to that moon bucket!
This way, Midge. Exclusive old world cottage. Ideal retreat for writer. A few minor repairs. Quick sale to right buyer. But to me at that moment in my life, it was the most beautiful place in the world. The place I knew I wanted to be.
Dr. Reeves' residence? Oh, good morning, Miss June. Yes, isn't it? The doctor's up in his thing, you know, his camera obscura. He's got his new lens from the shop this morning, and it makes a lovely picture. He's taken the big white garden table to project on. He'll be glad you're coming over. He's showing it to the dogs now.
Ah, Nice day. Mrs. Bidwell's duck's out too early. She'll lose all the eggs if she's not careful. Ah, the start of the cycling season. There's a hefty young girl. Time Mrs. Tucker went to get our rations. There she is. Oh, the vicar and his sister. Not coming here, I hope. No, good. Quite a queue at the butcher's. Must have some offal. Wonderful how the kids love playing in the splash. Just the same in my day. That tree ought to come down. Old Mary looking quite skittish. Sally Allgood getting herself dated up. Ah, here's June. Here she comes. She walks in beauty like the night. Only she's cycling and the sun is out. Nice girl. Worth a hatful of ambassadors in Lee Wood, anyway. Come on up.
They say that the eyes are the windows of the soul. But what is the soul a window of? Maybe that's the fundamental question of art. Let's see if we can work it out. You've probably seen me drive to my studio many a time if you watch my videos regularly. But if you don't watch my videos regularly, you know that I do a lot of YouTubing from my car. I like to do this because it uses up time. I can kill two birds with one stone. You get to see, the lighting's good, and you get to see sort of a scene that's changing in the background. So even if I'm being a bit boring, at least there's the interest of just finding out, you know, what I'm driving past. You know, there's a sort of story to taking a journey, isn't there? But this journey's different because today I'm going to make a film about art and film. And I'm going to look at the pretense of art, the lie of art, the conceit. Now here I am driving along. And when I drive along in my car, I do that because I'm trying to put across the idea that I'm a regular guy, just doing normal stuff. This isn't a conceit, right? This is just me driving in the car. There's no sense of artifice, or is there? I don't know. The difference with this is I've switched the radio on. Now, to me, I'm just driving in the car listening to some nice classical music, but for you watching it, there's a different aspect, isn't it? Because that music is now perceived as going with this image. I don't perceive it as going with the idea of me now, but you're seeing something different. And in watching it, the very act of watching it, the very act of me being put inside this rectangle, the very aspect of the fact that I have defined the start and the end of this conversation means that I am moulding it, I am creating it to try and communicate something to you. Now, on this video, I want to do something that artists never do, and I think it's a shame that they don't do this. As I'm driving to my studio, once I arrive at my studio and pull up, which you will see, but when I leave the car, it's going to go from this sense of artifice, which is actually seems quite natural, but it isn't, to an actual state of artifice using the mechanism of film. I'm not a filmmaker, I'm a novice, right? I'm a beginner at making films, you know. It's only been recently that I've had to make films and video because of doing my YouTube, and I've sort of not been forced to do it, I've enjoyed doing it. but I've started to learn certain tricks about it. I've started to learn that the fakery that's involved in making a film. And it's quite interesting, the ideas that you can put across on what is an artist trying to do. An artist is trying to use all this fakery and conceit to communicate what? Truth? So is truth in art the product of a lie? As Picasso said. It's interesting, isn't it? Right, I am now descending down the descent from my town into where my studio is. This is a magical journey. Let's turn the music up and enjoy the arrival at my studio. And remember, when I go in, it's all going to be pretty strange. Time and space. I think that is where the conceit starts. In a film, time and space is never quite right. We can have a film that lasts the time span of a day or a year or even a lifetime or even an eon. We can go back and forward in time, and we can also go from one place to the next. All of this, believe it or not, is the artifice of film. So, you lot are in here now. So how could you be out there and now be in here? It's really weird. And of course, this isn't my studio. This is somewhere else, isn't it? And where am I? It's quite strange, isn't it? Let's have an explore. You've moved around again. Now you're over here. None of this is making sense, is it? I mean, this scene here in my film seems to be quite artsy-fartsy and strange. It's quite surreal, isn't it? But the truth is, what happened was, just by using a simple edit, rather than walking into my studio, I've walked into this space, and you don't know what this space is. And this space is quite strange. Now, I actually haven't set this up. This is actually here. It just happens to be here. This is real life. I walk into a room, I walk across the room, and this is the scene I find. Isn't it? Yeah. He doesn't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. The truth is, real life makes a lot less sense than the truth we try and show through storytelling. Then, of course, we have the meaning of the scene. That last scene didn't really make much sense, and neither does this one. So you might be forgiven to thinking, why is Andy now surrounded by yarn? Well, a yarn could just be yarn, couldn't it? But this yarn's labelled. Does that have a meaning? Is there a meaning to all this? A yarn? Isn't a yarn a story?
But it's a story that's not true usually. It's a yarn. And why does a little bit of string represent a story? It's as though we grab onto these strings and pull at them. I'm in front of a very multicoloured group of yarn. We love a good yarn, don't we? There is nothing quite like a good yarn. Am I telling a yarn now? I don't know. And is this planned? Or am I just making use of a happy accident that I happen to find a room full of yarn? Well, I don't know if this room has managed to shed any light on the artifice of filmmaking. Made a point, I don't know. Anyway, let's switch the lights off. You see, this is another metaphor, isn't it? The light switch is going off. Oh, God, this is pretentious. That's always the worry, isn't it? When you're doing something creative, you feel like an idiot, don't you? I am really walking to my studio this time. And I'll use a cinematic device that I have used many a time before, where I let the camera, rather than editing it, I'll let the camera follow me up. The reason is because this is a style called cinema verite, which is where it's just handheld cameras and you just film it like it's real. Of course, would I be doing this if I wasn't filming it? I doubt it. But yeah, that's I think this is a worry. It's a worry for creative artists, I think. I am now actually in my studio. There's no fakery going on now. That's a worry for artists, isn't it? I've even stuck my thumb in front of the camera just to prove to you it's real. And I'm holding it there. All this, is it real or not real? Right, let's have a look now at the problem between the viewer and the viewed, as opposed to the artist and the audience. Hello there, my name is Andy Edwards. For today, I am the artist, I am the filmmaker, I am the auteur and creator of this wonderful thing that you're watching right now. And I represent in this piece of artifice the creator. I would now like to welcome into the picture the audience. And I represent
Hello, audience.
The audience. Yes, this is a piece of artifice.
Yeah. Right. I don't really understand what you're saying, to be honest. You know,
the thing is, I don't make the art.
It's only reason for me to be
for
here.
you to just think whatever you want it to be. I want it to get across the ideas that I'm
really not that interested.
No. Yeah, that is a problem.
You might have a point. I don't know. Don't care.
But
yeah,
what's interesting here is the fact that because of the artifice of this situation, the fact that this has been done with a split screen, another device,
it's pretentious. Look, you'd just be walking around.
I know we're talking over each other. I know.
Trying to make out it means something.
Well.
Yeah, well, you could have a go.
That's the point of this scene.
Yeah, see, it's a love-hate relationship, isn't
I know.
Really?
I know that the artist can never know.
I know, and the thing is, you've got me here like this, but
the audience
I now in on the art,
you're trying to work out.
So it defeats, isn't
that?
But
there's no point.
That's artifice. That is artifice. The whole thing is artifice. Your artifice. I didn't want to be here.
You had to use that.
You talk over me as much as you can talk. You can talk over me as much as you like. I didn't want to be here.
I can't stick him.
I don't want to be here.
I
just want to have an easy life, and I will talk regardless. You can storm off in a mood, you can get angry, whatever you want to do. I don't care. Right? It's like everything's our fault, isn't it? If the audience, everything's our fault. We're supposed to be intellectual, we're supposed to be sensitive, we'll be able to read your mind. But the truth is, the reason why I don't bother watching you is because you're boring, right? There's nothing interesting. I like a good story, I like some action. What the hell's this? There's no story and action to this. It's absolute rubbish. Where's the fights? Where's the comedy? There's no women in it. I mean, are you a sexist? I like to see some women in my films. Absolute rubbish. Andy's here. God, he's a bloody pretentious fool, that bloke. He really is. What is he trying to do? I don't know. Anyway, God, what is this place? What is going on there? How old's the bloke? Looks like a teenager's room. Doesn't it? You've got some lights on here. I mean, what do they do? Yeah, that's ruined it now. Has that upset the lighting? What happens if I go over here like this? What happens? I mean, what the hell's this about? See, it's all fake. It's all fake. Oh, feel stressed this morning. I feel stressed most mornings. This bit where I try and get my act together always happens before I do a YouTube video. I sit in my chair, take some deep breaths, try to get my head out of all the worries and stresses of life, try and focus on the idea I'm about to talk. And when I feel I'm in the right place, I start talking. Now, in this bit here, because I like things that are in 3 parts. So you had all the video at the beginning from all the lovely films, right? And there was one bit that was very, very important to me, and it was a scene from Ring of Bright Water, which was made in, I think, 1970, 71. It was a follow-up to Born Free. It had Bill Travers in it, who had been in Born Free with his wife, Virginia McKenna. Born Free had been a big success, adapting a book about some people who were looking after lions out in Africa. I think they got murdered in the end. Now, I have a funny story about Born Free, and it's popped into my head. And I didn't plan to talk about this, you see, but I will, because it makes me laugh. And it's not really got anything to do with this, but a little funny story might just draw you in, because people like a story. Do you remember the grumpy audience member that just jumped into my film that looked just like me? He wanted a story. Well, here's a story. Many, many years ago, my first trip to America, I went with the brass band. The brass band was made up of kids, and they booked a bunch of gigs. They didn't really know where the gigs were going to be, but they knew they got some gigs. So they went over on an exchange program to do these gigs. Now, the set that they rehearsed back in the UK. So they got their set together, and then they went out to America, and I went with them. And I was there as a sort of teacher looking after some of the kids, and I was filming it as well. Now, the first tune in their set was Born Free. Born free as a whatever it is. I can't remember the rest of the lyrics. Great song, huge hit record. Everyone knows that tune. The problem was their first gig was in a zoo. So the kids rocked up, set up in this little bit, surrounded by all these animals in cages, and then almost to take the mickey out of the situation, played Born Free. See, that's a little story there. Might have made you chuckle, might not have made you chuckle. Anyway, Ring of Bright Water, which I showed you a scene where Bill Travers was walking through the actual Scottish countryside, trying to find the little hovel that he's bought with his otter Midge. It's one of my favourite films of all time. And I put it in the in that, you know, little, what would you call it, collage. Montage is actually the word I'm looking for. Montage of film clips, because people don't think of it as a great film. I think it's a truly great film. But the thing is, it's great, but it is quiet and flippant, which is the hallmark of British filmmaking. In British filmmaking, when an Englishman wants to find himself, right, he goes out, as you may go out into the wilderness, as Jesus Christ went out into the wilderness to face the everything, and be tested by it. Englishmen often go up to Scotland. I think this is because as Englishmen see Scotland as a wilder place, but also a more mystical place. Now, in that scene, if you go back and rewind and have a look at it, he's walking, trying to find the cottage. But as he walks, he gets overwhelmed by the countryside. He gets overwhelmed by the landscape. And the music rises up and it takes over. Now, throughout this film, all the way through, the music would suddenly rise up and take over, as though this aesthetic that's coming in from the landscape, which I call the English aesthetic, and through the eyes of the Englishman, I believe even in this film it is the English aesthetic, that feeling overwhelms the story, as though it's a character in the film that is imploring. But what's it imploring? What is it imploring? Well, I think it's in the tradition of romanticism, isn't it? And it's the idea that you go into the landscape, and when you go into the landscape, you face something which is sublime. And the sublime is beautiful, but the sublime is also threatening. Beauty, of course, is the beginning of terror. The idea of the romantic viewer is someone stuck on a mountainside in the middle of a storm, terrified for their own life, but in awe at the absolute power and beauty of nature, which forces us from thinking we are the center of the universe, like the artist thinks they are, to boiling them down to just being a speck within nature. And that is the nature of the artist. It's that dialectic. And I love that scene, the way the music overwhelms it. And then when Bill Travers finds his little cottage, it's run down and it's awful, but he loves it. Again, another dialectic, because he has got away from something. And what is he getting away from? He's getting away from all this man-made hell that we live in, right? All these dystopian ideas, human beings trying to force their will on other people. And so in filmmaking, I think there is a want and a desire to try and be natural, to try and conjure up something which in the viewer seems real. When I found this studio, I loved it. It was old and Victorian. There was all these natural, they're not natural, but more natural elements than we have today, like the old brickwork, the wooden flooring. But of course, this great big full-length window was the big seller for me, because the whole time I'm working, I can look out into that, and that sustains me. And I think there is, within English film, a use of the landscape, and often Scotland. Scotland is often the place where the English people go to really experience something wild. There's that famous scene in Trainspotting, of course, where they're not Englishmen, they're Scottishmen, but they're drug addicts. And they are trapped in their drug addiction. And at one point, they go out into the Scottish countryside, and they don't seem to be comfortable there. And eventually, after walking, they come up against a bridge, don't they? And that bridge sort of represents them breaking out of the habit and walking into the countryside, and they don't want to do it. It's echoed by, at the end, Ewan McGregor walking away from that lifestyle and crossing another bridge. So a bridge in a film can be a metaphor from one place to the next. English film, British film, has this sort of wisdom in. But the thing with British art is it's quiet. It's not full of big ideas. It's worth looking at the history of film a little bit to explain the history of conceit in the film. The first films, of course, were films of plays. Plays are the biggest conceit there is, where somebody sits down in a room, the other end of the room is then you have to pretend that you were looking through some sort of window at another scene. It's so obvious that however they do the sets and the art direction of creating sets is incredible. But in a theatre, you're always aware that you're sat in a theatre. There is always the awareness of artifice. Of course, Bertolt Brecht in the 1920s or 30s, I'm not too sure exactly when, I wish my art history knowledge was better. He played on this by trying to break the fourth wall. I'm breaking the fourth wall now by talking to you. I'm talking into the camera. So if you imagine that sort of scene that you look at when you watch a play is transferred to film, you know, this is a wall. There's a wall at the back. There's a wall on the right you can't see. But that wall I'm looking into doesn't exist. That's the fourth wall. You're sat behind the fourth wall. Bertolt Brecht used a thing called the alienation effect, where he would talk in the middle of a play. Of course, if you're English, you will probably know this technique if you're from a certain age, from not Bertolt Brecht, but from Lovejoy. If you remember Lovejoy, who was the sort of charismatic and yet a slightly dodgy antiques salesman, what a premise for a TV show, would turn around and talk to the audience, wouldn't he? And in doing that, we suddenly became aware that he was in a piece of artifice, okay? And that's what this video is all about. It's about artifice. This is what it's all about. So the early films were films of plays. At some point, people started to realise they could stop and start the camera. They could move the camera. And the other thing is the cameras required so much light that for an industry really to develop, it would have to develop in somewhere really hot and sunny. Hollywood was the perfect place. The film industry before that had been out on the East Coast, as you would expect in America. But film studios could buy up buildings and then build film sets in the open. And when you watch those old films, it's quite obvious that the light's not right because you feel like you are in a room, but that is fake. It's on top of a building and the light doesn't seem right. So at the beginning of the 20th century, filmmakers start to experiment with filming outside. And you start to see filmmakers venturing out of Hollywood into the surrounding environment. Now, that environment is a set. And back in 1903, when the Great Train Robbery was made, the set was real. Now, we see cowboy films as being a genre, but of course, in 1903, it was a contemporary film that told a contemporary story, but it did it so brilliantly because it broke the fourth wall and it uses all sorts of devices to tell the story. I've talked about this on other videos here. And so Hollywood starts to then create this idea of the genre film. And the genre film has a bunch of rules in it. When you watch a genre film, the artifice with the genre film is that they are transmitting messages to you through the genre. So obviously, when a cowboy film starts up now and you're in a saloon and the piano player's playing, that communicates something to you. And what it communicates is all's right with the world. Everyone's happy. And then suddenly the saloon doors swing open. And as soon as the saloon doors swing open, we know that this is about to change and threat is entering. Threat entering into a storyline is compelling. The guy walks in, he's got a black hat, he looks mean, he stares around, and the piano player decides to stop playing and slowly walk away, because if a shoot entails, you don't want to shoot the piano player. And this comes from the idea that you could stick a sign up in your bar saying, "Don't shoot the piano player." And what that does is suggest that violence is happening all the time. And people like to watch films where there's violence happening all the time. That's why they love war films, cowboy films, anything where there's war going on, we love. If we skirt forward to the pretentious 1950s when the French New Wave emerged, Francois Truffaut did not make a cowboy film, and he called it "Don't Shoot the Pianist." That was a reference to cowboy films. And throughout that film, he doesn't lampoon because he has an affection for genre films, but he uses the idea of genre to place himself as being the genre. French New Wave moves the idea of understanding a film from the idea it's a genre to being the idea it's in the mind of the director. And we get this idea of the auteur, the author of the film. Now, as time has gone on, we have seen a sort of marriage between genre films and auteur films. So if we look at the greatest films that are made, like Jaws or Star Wars or The Godfather, These are all genre films made in America, but we don't just channel them through the idea of knowing the genre. We now think of the genre and the director, and we know the themes of the director. Now, in terms of British film, our first and possibly greatest auteur of them all, and the guy that really informed French New Wave film, was Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock is old enough, born in 1899, to have been trained in silent film. Silent film is interesting because it's a universal language and you get to learn how to tell a story through pictures. He's always very interested in the story. Hitchcock knows how to tell a story to the point where he understands a story so well that he will use devices where there's no actual story. You are just left with the devices, and he will play with those devices. He will get you to a certain point by exposing you to something that's interesting. You're in the saloon, you know, the piano player's playing, they're all happy, and then suddenly the saloon doors swing open, and then what? Then there's nobody there. That would like be a Hitchcockian device where he would take you to a certain point and then go, there's nobody there. All right. He was brilliant at going into the mind of the audience. So he makes the audience do the work. This seems counterintuitive. If you're telling a joke in real life, you try and hold the punchline back from the audience. Hitchcock doesn't do that. He tells you the punchline first and then walks up to the punchline. And because you know the punchline's coming, he then plays with you and he denies access to that punchline. So Hitchcock is both the great tension director and the first great auteur. British director that had his first triumphs here in the United Kingdom, and then he went over to America where he became one of the great directors. But he learned his training on what were called quota quickies. These are films that were made in the United Kingdom in the 20s and 30s. They were made very quick, very cheaply. And a director getting onto that sort of treadmill of making films would learn their craft very quickly. In fact, a training ground that probably doesn't exist anymore. Now you just got useless old YouTubers trying to make films with an iPhone. But back then, maybe I could have been lucky enough to be one of those quota quickie directors. One of them was Michael Powell. Michael Powell emerges in the late 1930s from these quota quickies as one of the other great British auteurs. He teams up with a non-English person, Emmerich Pressburger, an immigrant to the United Kingdom, who's a writer. And after making The Spy in Black, they find they've got such a great storytelling team there that they decide to work together, and they get known as Powell and Pressburger, or the Archers. These are my favourite filmmakers of all time. Alfred Hitchcock seemed to have very little interest in the English landscape. Like, I suppose if you watch a Jamaica Inn, there is some sort of interest in the coastline of the United Kingdom. But Powell and Pressburger have an incredible relation to the aesthetics of Great Britain. They use this idea continually of going up to Scotland to find yourself. Michael Powell's first serious film, which is called Edge of the World, explores that mystical world. As he tells the story of a remote island in Scotland, which is going to die at some point. And this is a really, really incredible film. And at the start of the film, you see this island that was once inhabited, which is no longer inhabited, and you get the feel through the filmmaking that the ghosts are still there. And then it goes back to a time where people did live there, and then it plays out this sort of morality tale. In the 1970s, Michael Powell returned back to that island and made another documentary, and that's Essential Viewing. He also had the English landscape in all of his films, and often there would be a story, because of the war, of English people travelling from England into Europe and having their Englishness challenged. And what is their Englishness? Well, the Englishness, I think, is best personified in the 1943 film, The Life of Colonel Blimp. Our protagonist is a Colonel Blimp, a sort of Winston Churchill-like huffy, stuffy Englishman who is a general of the army, stuck in his ways. And in this film, we follow him from his youth to becoming that stuffy general. And it uses every cinematic device in the book. We have elliptical time, we have the playing of space. So we start off in the present, we then go back to the beginning. That plays up through, and our time scale runs in different times. Sometimes we're looking at specific scenes, but sometimes he can represent a whole decade just by cross-cutting of the appearance of stuffed animal heads on a wall, which gives us the feeling that our protagonist has been out in Africa at some point because he's bored just shooting animals. My favourite scene in Colonel Blimp is when Anton Walbrook, who is a German in the Second World War, arrives in Great Britain and argues why he should be let in as an asylum seeker. It's so apt now, as is most of Powell and Pressburger's film, to watch that. Anton Walbrook sits down and he basically argues that he should be let into the United Kingdom after lying and saying how much he hates the Nazis. And they don't believe that. They know he's going to say that. But then he says that he loves Great Britain. It's such a strange thing for him to say. He says it's not rational, but he loves the people, the landscape. And I think that love has been, throughout the history of British film, has been captured by our best directors. So how do you go about capturing it, and what does it mean, and how does artifice and fakery operate in British film? Well, I've tried to give you some examples here in this bit, but let's change scene again just to keep you interested, and I will think of some profound thing to say at the end that might make this make sense. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Let's have a little interlude here, actually.
Ralph showed him some pornographic pictures. Jimmy knew he shouldn't be interested, but, well, he was curious. What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual.
Whoa! And he's got all weird now. He's put the camera at an angle, he never does that. He's all wonky. He's wonky now. He promised some profound ending to this. Yeah, I know, I've got a delivery at this bit. What do you think to the little interlude? It was comical, but also offensive, wasn't it? It was comical, but offensive. It's exposed a different time. I really believe that in the 1960s, our culture shifted. And I think when we go back to those sorts of information films of the 1950s, they seem quaint and archaic, and their moral values seem upside down to us now. The period that we've been in since the 1960s, the easiest way of describing that period would be the postmodernist period, is coming to an end and it's unravelling. And a lot of the morals that we held dear in that period of time contained in our film will suddenly look archaic. They don't to us now, but 10, 20 years, we could definitely have a situation that's putting films on from the 1970s, 80s and 90s. They just don't seem to be real. The filmmakers that made that documentary, that little sort of beware of the homosexual documentary, they thought that they were telling the truth. That's the interesting thing, is this idea of truth. Because on this video, I just wanted for people who are interested in film to explore the artifice of film, really inspired from Orson Welles' F for Fake.
Orson Welles being one of the greatest directors and really pushing the idea of reality and lack of reality in Citizen Kane, where he tells a story using every single device that cinema can offer, revolutionising cinema. And there he is towards the end of his career, standing up and explaining to you the fakery that exists, that the artist is really just a magician doing a trick, or a great comedian telling a joke. Except with film, we're usually in on the joke. I now can stare off as though I said something profound. I may even hold my chin at that point, and you can ponder it. Something that has probably limited truth and worth and profundity to it, but of course, by saying it in a certain way, I can make it seem profound. And maybe that here is the best way of ending this video, is by using the fake artifice of this to make you feel like something profound has happened. Shall we have a go at that, shall we? The punchline of a joke is funny because it represents the great dialectic. We find it funny because there are two opposing forces and we know them both so well. And in trying to bring those two forces together, we see that it doesn't quite make sense. A punchline is a metaphor for the existential existence in which we find us. The art of the comedian is to hide the punchline from us. And in telling us a story that we get involved in, we move closer and closer to that, and we're invested more and more. When the punchline is revealed, we laugh because we can't quite pull the two scenarios that have been exposed by the story together. What do you call an alligator in a vest? He is an investigator. When I say that, it's a straight description of an alligator in a vest. Investigator. That would be a way of putting those two words together. But when you say it, it's another word, and it makes us picture the alligator perhaps with a Sherlock Holmes hat on and a magnifying glass, or maybe a little bit like some sort of film noir detective sat in a black and white room. And seeing the alligator in that situation is quite funny, I think. But the humour is really in the fact that we can't bring those two things together. This, when exposed by the comedian, actually puts us in touch with the profound or the sublime. And at the end of this video, with this bit here, where I'm talking to you up close like this and very seriously, I want to put across the idea of the profound. Well, the profound aspect of art is that it is basically a joke, and it exposes the joke of life. But the thing that's special about film is film lets you in on the punchline. And in letting you in on the punchline, it moves you from being just a passive audience member, but brings you up to having the same view as the auteur that has made the film. For a few instances, you may see the world through the eyes of this director, and through his artifice, you may for an instant feel what it's like to see the world through someone else's eyes. And in that, humanity is reaffirmed. Art and music is a lie, but it is a lie that exposes the truth. Time to go. I'm going home now. My little video's over. I wasn't going to film this bit, but when I got in the car, this
piece of music that was on Classic FM sounded just the right sort of music to lull you into thinking that this ending has some sort of touching melancholy and yet satisfaction in the fact that a job has done well. A job has been done well, actually. Shall I get it right? So we're gonna have the titles now, and you'll see the end bit. That's the bit that goes at the end of the film, and you know that this is now the end because I've done a fake ending just to show you that even the end of a film can be messed about with, can't it? Oh, the devious techniques of filmmakers. And the thing is that we watch this stuff all day long. We rejoice and bathe in fakery. Does that not change us in some way? Are we not changed as is humanity not changed by film? At one point all there was reality. And now do we really know what reality is? And maybe is it because our lack of real concrete reality is why we can no longer make sense of the world we're in? I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works. Right, it's a big thing I've found out on doing YouTube films, videos and filming stuff. If you just let everything be, it just seems to work out. And I don't know why. Oh, that was a good ending. It was just so perfect. It just didn't cut off in the wrong place.